And we're going to see if the live thing catches up. We've got a good stream. It says we are now 3 seconds into the stream. All right, that's pretty cool. I'm going to make sure that the thing catches up over here on the play page, and I have to have my volume turned down, otherwise you guys will hear, I don't know, an ad, I guess. Or eventually just an echo, which will be really boring. There we go. And we're going to pop out the chat so I can see it better. And move this here so I can see that. All right, cool. Everything is rolling, and if you'll look at the screen, you'll see my lovely, lovely skeletons out in the backyard, technically in what we like to call the grotto, a couple weeks ago, well, last weekend actually, I think, surrounded by some finished terrain as well. I'll be talking about those skeletons today at some point during the broadcast. Hey, look, it's me. All right, so, yeah, so it's a Sunday morning. At least here where I am. Where you are, it's probably someplace, or some other time, I'm certain. Let's see, we've got, I see Australia, Delaware. We've got someone from the Dwarven Kingdom. I'm not familiar with that particular area. Let's see here, Japan, and the UK. Melanie Dawn says that she made it, even though she's not feeling well, so I hope that she feels better soon. And I'm just going to move this light because it's sort of dark all of a sudden. Northern Germany. Again, Australia as well. It's been rainy all day yesterday, and then this morning it was lovely, and now it just got cloudy again. So all of a sudden my exposure is funny, which is why it seems a bit dark. I could move this off of that, but then see, that's very bright, so I'm just going to put that back there. We'll just be in a dark, moody kind of look today and see how that works out. Well, let's see here. Poland, Texas, Netherlands, California, Saskatchewan. I always like the word Saskatchewan. Saskatoon, see, I can't even get those two words together. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. That's difficult to do. Texas, Upper Michigan. That's not too far away from here. What we like to call the UP, the Upper Peninsula. Estonia, Milwaukee. Milwaukee's relatively close. Italy is not close. Germany, Sweden. Let's see here. More UK, Virginia, Finland, Yorkshire. Matthew says Chicago here. Matthew is our moderator today. Matthew is one half of the creative powerhouse that makes up Hyacinth Games. They make Wreck Age, which I've talked about in the past. It's post-apocalyptic, so I'm pretty much on board. I'll be seeing Matthew and Anton at a convention coming up in October, actually, here in the town in which I live. I've got a thing here. I've got a graphic. Hang on, here it comes. That didn't work. That's my face is in the way. Anyway, New Gameapalooza is the name of the convention that I'm going to be at, and it's just a small little gaming convention, maybe about 250, 300 people. It's in UW Oshkosh, which is the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. It's going to be held there the 14th and 16th of October, and Matt and Anton are going to be there, and I'm going to be there, and there's going to be a bunch of other people there. So anyway, you should check out the website, and if you're into game conventions, and if you're sort of close-ish, you should come. Even if you're not sort of close-ish, it's held in the university, and they have housing upstairs. You can stay like in dorm rooms for super cheap. So if you're traveling from someplace and you're like, well, I don't want to travel, and then also have to get like a hotel room and all that, and that's very expensive. The dorm rooms are like $40 for the night, so it's, and then you can kind of relive college, which is fun too. I'm going to make this get out of the way because I've got to plan that better next time. All right. So, yeah, so that's a cool convention that I'm looking forward to. I do love I do love going to conventions, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Germany, Holland, Mexico, UK. Ozog Houston says, first time I've caught a live show. Well, there you go. Canada, Georgia, Dubai. Wow, Dubai. I don't think we've ever had a Dubai before. Cool. All right. So, let's see. What have I been working on in the last 2 weeks? Well, the skeletons, which we'll go over in a little while. I've been working on those. Yesterday, a good portion of the day, I worked on, if you remember several episodes back, I showed off, I think it was something about Underpainting Death was the title on that show, and I was showing a couple of the more HQ units for my Death Army that I had built, based, primed, and then kind of highlighted, so it was like that white to black fade. And so a good portion of yesterday I was in the basement working on those guys. Mainly two of the three. There's a White King with Baleful Tombblade, or whatever. And then there's also another White King with the Black Axe. And then there's the Tomb Banshee. And I've been painting those two White Kings, and the Tomb Banshee, I have not been able to, in my mind, sit down and like really figure out how I'm going to color. Like, she's got like a whole crazy, cloak, and the sun's coming back out. She's got this crazy cloak, and she's kind of floating, and it's just I haven't figured out my color combinations yet, so I've been sort of holding off on her. I've done her skin, since she's a scary banshee, and it's bright, kind of like almost neon green sort of, which I think will work. I might throw a parchment wash on it just to kind of drop the saturation of color a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. So, but anyway, that's what I was doing. Let's see here. Indiana. Glass Biotope says, so we can't stay at your place, Adam. No, I don't think that would work out. We don't have that much space. Plus, there's cats. It's just my excuse. Let's see here. What else have we got? Florida. Tuscany. Ooh. Let's see. Canada. Matthew says that if you come to the convention, say hi, I'll be the drunk guy. Yeah, it's valid. I'm pretty sure it's the case. Depending on the time of the day, I might be in that same guy. We'll see how it goes. The convention it's technically 3 days. It's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I never go to Friday. I've just never been, like if you go to a big convention like Gen Con or Adepticon or something like that, well, then you're there and you're there. When you go to a local convention, at least for me, a lot of times it's like, well, I got to work on Friday, so I'm just going to be there Saturday, Sunday. So what that means is I'll be there Saturday, Sunday. But yeah, so the convention runs from like about, 9 in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night on Saturday, and probably about the same on Sunday, but not as late, probably till about, I think, 5 or 6. So, yeah. But sometime in the evening, probably on Saturday, I think that after the things close, being a college town, I have a suspicion that some shenanigans will occur. So just a heads up for that. Tyler, did I miss much? Not particularly, no. I've just been talking a little bit about what I did yesterday, painting on not my skeletons, but my death HQ guys. No love for SA. I don't know what SA is, Ivan. I'm sorry. Let's see here. He said 200 to 300 people is a small convention. I've been to bigger, but that's still a lot of peeps. Well, to be fair, it's not necessarily 200 to 300 people all at once. It's a small convention. I used to run a convention actually in the exact same spot at the university. I ran just a general tabletop gaming convention, which is what this is. There's board gaming, there's RPGs, there's magic, there's whatever, there's vendors. So maybe over the course of the 2 days or whatever, you're getting to somewhere around between 200 and 300 people. But it's a small, fun little convention. There's a lot of things going on. They'll have, as we get closer and closer to the date, the event listing will get more and more dialed in. You'll be able to see like what's going to, like right now, they've just opened up, events for GMs. For those of you who are just joining, I'm talking about this New Gamapalooza, which is a convention that's going to be here in town in, as it says right over there, October 14th through the 16th. So I'm going to be there, as I said before. Matt's going to be there. Oh, right, there's a link right there. Matt is on the ball putting up a link. And there's this thing here too. So yeah, just go check out the website. There'll be more information as it gets closer and closer to the date, but this is the date, and I'll be there. It's going to be fun. Excuse me. So let's see here. What else we got? Norway, Finland. Spam Man says, I just got into Age of Sigmar. My wife and some friends and I are starting to play some of my old Empire and Orcs and Goblins figures to learn the new rules. That's a great way to do it. If you've already got the models because you used to play fantasy or something like that, to then start, you know, just taking those models and then using them to learn the rules, especially if you're playing with people you live with or that you're married to or whatever. I think it's a great way to go. So yeah, I think that's really honestly one of the ways that the game was kind of designed, at least from that point over at Games Workshop. Like they were looking at we need another starter game. Those of you who've been kind of watching the news, and by news I mean gaming news, not like real news, Games Workshop is also going to be releasing soon some sort of Kill Team starter thing for 40K, which is like a box. It comes with some Space Marines and some Tau and the 7th edition book, and then also like a special thing about how to play with small battles, how to play with basically like a skirmish game. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so we'll see how it kind of goes. I think that they're trying to aim for that market because they understand that making the game too huge and monolithic is just not really getting new people into it. So Tristan says, I just spilled my Nuln oil. Been there. Yeah, that's no fun. Oh, South Africa. Sorry, Ivan. Hello, South Africa. Yeah, the Nuln oil. I've spilled Agrax Earthshade. There's still stains on my table a little bit. It's a mess. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Matthew just mentioned that they were shooting videos with... if you guys have watched Beasts of War in the past, Dawn and Gianna are the U.S. correspondents, which is what I used to do back from about 2010 to 2013-ish for Beasts of War. And they've now got a studio that they do here over in the States, actually, because Dawn and Gianna are based out of Illinois, and so's Matt and Anton, so they went over and did some video shooting with them yesterday, which he and I talked about last night, which was cool. Yeah, so... Oh, yeah, Melanie's talking about Backstage, which is the Backstage. That's the kind of the like pay-per-view sort of kind of, like membership thing that they do at Beasts of War. They do something like that at Mini Wargaming 2 called The Vault. So, sorry, just kicked the table. Let's see here. Virginia. That's a state, not just a person's name. Although it was my grandmother's name, just in case you're wondering. Let's see here. I'm being asked, what software are you using for those overlays? Oh, yeah, this is XSplit. XSPLIT. And it's a broadcasting and encoding software that I then use to send directly to YouTube Live. And I can use multiple cameras, and I can put in overlays and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And since I'm a dork and I like that kind of thing, then this is the kind of thing I like. Costs about $60 a year, so it's really pretty reasonable, honestly. Let's see. Gaming news is real news. Well, to us, yes, which is why I originally just said if you've been paying attention to the news. But to the average person, it's not particularly real news. Let's see. Spam Man says, I just got the General's Handbook because I have a hard time wrapping my head around the no points thing, so now I have points. Yeah, and honestly, that's, I think it was a good thing on their part to do, There's no reason not to give as many options to your player base as possible. That all being said, I'm actually going to be playing a points game later on this afternoon, my first points game. My friend Kevin, who owns the shop, he and I are going to play a 1,000-point game just to give it a try, see how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to like totally dig it or not, but we'll see how it goes. I don't want to be one of those guys who's like, oh, I don't like broccoli. I don't like broccoli. And like, well, have you ever tried it? Well, no, I never have. I don't want to be the guy who says, oh, I don't like points, but then I've never played a points game. You know what I mean? So I'm going to play points games. Probably going to play a bunch of them, kind of, well, or at least some, to see what I think. And I'd be totally happy if my mind was changed, about this is maybe the better way to go for me or whatever. I like the ability to also just be like, let's just throw down some stuff and go, and that's the open way. I'm hoping eventually to get some games of, what do you want to call it? The narrative stuff also taken care of. I want to get some of that stuff under my belt eventually, but for now we're going to start with 1,000 point. I'm going to be bringing my Chaos because my Death Army isn't really painted as far as I'd like to go, but everything I should be bringing for my 1,000 point army later today is all going to be painted, so that's always nice. Let's see here. So they're going to try an AOS way of playing. I don't know if it's going to be, I think you're talking about the kill team thing. I don't know that it's going to be like that. I'd love to get a hold of the rules without having to buy the whole kit. If they were smart, in my opinion, they would release the rules as a PDF, because when you buy that box set that they've got pre-order right now on the website, this is the 40K kill team for those of you who are just joining, the box set is like Space Marines, Tau, the little 7th edition rule book, and then this kind of pamphlet-y thing for kill team. Okay, well that's cool. But what if I've already got all that stuff except for the pamphlet? I'm hoping that they're going to release the pamphlet as a free download. Heck, even I'll pay $2 for it, like on iTunes or whatever. I don't know. But that would be nice because I'd like to get a look at that. So let's see here. Mark says that Tabletop Minions Live, the perfect accompaniment to building more Necrons. Keep building those Necrons. That's cool. Gets the hobby juices flowing. It's true. Let's see here. I've been infected with the AOS virus as well, getting 1,000 points of Flesh Eaters, planning on 2,000 points for the future. Yeah, I mean, it's always, that's what's nice about when you build that way, is you kind of can just keep growing. Trevor asks, did I build Black Knights or Hex Wraiths? I built Hex Wraiths, actually, because they can fly. And their horses don't have any skin on their heads, which I thought was just sort of cool looking. They're like skeletal horses, and so that's kind of neat. But yeah. I'm going to mispronounce this. Misho says that if you don't want to pay for XSplit, you can do OBS. I started OBS, and it did not like to work with my webcams as much, which is why I switched to XSplit. So, but yeah, OBS is free. It's Open Broadcasting System, something like that. I forget what OBS stands for. Ozog says, I'd really like a Necromunda re-release. Yeah, you and me both. I think that, we all know that Blood Bowl is coming because they're rebooting Specialist games, and that's cool. I think for all of us, none of this is going to come as quickly as we'd like. We'd like all this stuff to come out right away, and obviously they can't do that. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to come after. I think I've heard maybe Epic is going to come after Blood Bowl, which, I don't know. I was never into Epic, but maybe they're looking at their numbers or their old numbers and going, well, yeah, that's the most important choice right after Blood Bowl, because Blood Bowl is obviously like the biggest of all of those kind of Specialist games. So let's see here. Take a look at the vampire count on the zombie dragon. I've heard he's a beast. Yeah, I don't. I have a Terrorgeist, which I bought from a guy on eBay, and then it showed up, and it is basically just an amalgam of parts, which obviously when you buy a model, that's what it is anyway, but this one's been primed, and it looks like it was put together at one point and then was dashed apart upon rocks. So I'm going to have to do some work. Luckily I didn't pay much for it. So I'm going to have to do some work to make that, happen. But, so I don't know that I'm going to necessarily put the zombie dude on top or whatever, the zombie king or whatever. I'm just going to probably just go with the straight Terrorgeist because I think he's really cool looking. I like his head, and just the pose is pretty cool. Let's see here. I want to pick up Age of Sigmar. Played Fantasy in the past. Don't know how, but my wife wants to play and paint too. Any tips and advice to start up? I would download the app for your smartphone or your tablet or whatever, because it's free. I would get the rules for free. I would look at the models that you already have if you used to play Fantasy and figure out what you got. Download those War Scrolls, which are also free, and then just start kind of going from there, honestly. So yeah. As usual on a Sunday morning, I'm hoarse for some reason. I don't know. Let's see here. Ryan says, in Kill Team, you have to have one model be a leader and 4 models have to be specialists like Close Combat, Dirty Fighter. Well, that's the old Kill Team. you're right on that. I don't, is that the new Kill Team? I don't know. Like, I haven't seen anything about what the new rules are. If they're just like, oh, it's the old rules, but we're just putting it in a different package, or if they've made new rules for Kill Team and just keep naming it that over and over again. Because this is, if they've changed the rules a little bit, this will be like, as far as I know, at least the third, if not fourth, incarnation of Kill Team that they've done. Plus, there's a group online called Horde of Painters, or Horde of, no, Painters of Ruin, something Ruin, and they also made a Kill Team version, which is free and is downloaded, but it's kind of cool. Let's see here. How goes the talks with Warlord to get some Conflict 47? I talked to them back and forth on email. I'm kind of waiting to see if they're going to send it. They kind of said that they were. I don't know if it's just stuck in the mail or whatever, but I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to see that. I'd like to do a lot of painting on that stuff and run some kind of games. So yeah, I've been watching some videos about Kill Team and looking at some pictures. Obviously, I'm on the Kill Team, or not Kill Team, sorry, Conflict 47. I'm on the Conflict 47 group on Facebook, so I get to see a lot of cool miniatures that are painted and think about, like, when I get mine, what I'm going to do with them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So you like where we just grab some stuff and go, which I respect. I'm curious, what are your favorite models to play? Objectives, King of the Hills. Oh, favorite modes to play. King of the Hill, Major, Minor, Victory, Sudden Death. We generally play Objectives, or King of the Hill. Actually, one of each of those. Like, we've played a bunch of those, the people that I play with around here. We usually go with, excuse me again, the Major and Minor Victories and the Sudden Death rules. We work with those. Like, if there's one player who's just got a lot more models, then we do the Sudden Death thing. And we also do the Major and Minor Victories in most situations. So yeah, we play with like a lot of that stuff too. But yeah, and as Spam Man says, the app is great. Honestly, I'm astounded that the Games Workshop put out an app of that quality, because they've been always sort of like a little standoffish from digital stuff, up until the last several years. But like, this app is really great. So if you're interested in Age of Sigmar at all, it's free. It's really super useful. So let's see here. Okay, the Kill Team that I remember reading was a free PDF. Then that was probably the whatever of Ruin. I can't remember what the heck their name was. If somebody else remembers the name in there, it's something Ruin Kill Team. It may have already gone by. Herald of Ruin, Ryan Copeland says. Yes, it's the Heralds of Ruin. I knew it was something like that. So the Heralds of Ruin Kill Team rules are interesting. You need to have the codices for the armies that you might want to play, and you need to have the main book, but then they have this entire different way of like how to play and how to do it, and it's sort of cool. Yeah. Let's see here. How do you get your friends into tabletop wargaming? Asks Strange Shenanigans, which is a pretty awesome name. How do you get your friends into wargaming? Well, not every friend is, even when led to water, necessarily going to drink. One of the best ways that I've found is to get a skirmish game together and to build two small armies, which is kind of the point of skirmish games, is small armies. If you were to say, hey, let's play some 40k, well, then you're going to need to provide two 40k armies, which could be, even at 1,500 points, can be pretty massive. But if you're going to be playing a game like, I don't know, Mercs, you need 5 models on each team. If you're going to be playing a game like Malifaux, you need maybe 6 to 8 models on each team. If you're going to be playing a game like, Wreckage, or some of the more indie type games like that, you can just get away with 5, 6 models per team. So you, as the person who wants to become the gaming advocate, and I've got an old video about becoming a gaming advocate, so go check that out if you're in the mood. Basically what you're doing is you're going to build both, and then say, hey, this is how war games work. And then you teach them. And then you just have to sort of maybe see if it sticks. Maybe do it a couple of times. Be like, hey, you want to come over and play again, next week or whatever. With a lot of them, the hump is painting. With a lot of them, the thing that they have a hard time getting over is painting. When you sit down and say, listen, let's play and, do this, if they're even vaguely interested in tabletop gaming, whether it's board gaming or whatever, they'll probably play and they'll check it out, but they may not, want to keep going when you show them all of your paints and brushes and all that jazz. Another good way to do it, at least to get them kind of interested and kind of get their toe dipped, is gateway games. X-Wing is a great one. a lot of like the games that come up from now from Cool Mini or Not, Zombicide, Blood Rage, Zombicide. There's a zillion of them. There's a lot of just different, like I got into tabletop wargaming because a friend of mine taught me to play Space Hulk. Space Hulk's a great gateway game. So yeah, those types of things, either starting them off with a gateway game like that that's kind of a pseudo board game, pseudo miniatures game, or moving them straight into like, here's a small skirmish game. I've got two armies and we can play and you don't have to do anything and you just try it out. Those are kind of the best ways, I think. Hey Adam, do you have opinions, advice on paint shakers, mixers, agitators added to pots and such things for brush use, not for airbrushing? Do you use such things? I generally don't. I've always heard that you could put stuff in your pots so that you can shake them and it'll help shake it up. I'm always nervous about throwing like a BB in there, like what's it going to do over time? Like if it's copper, that's cool, but maybe the copper might start to react with the paint over time. I don't know. I had a friend who took a jigsaw, like a tabletop jigsaw, and he hot glued a empty medicine bottle to the head where the blade goes up and down, and then he could stick his paint pots in there, tighten the thing down, and just turn on the jigsaw, and it would like vibrate really super fast, and then he could mix up his paints really quickly that way. I would not suggest doing that unless you already have a jigsaw and want to sort of modify it. But yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, like putting stuff in the pots always makes me a bit nervous for shaking. Some companies, from what I understand, do it themselves. I don't know if Reaper does or if I've just heard that and it's a rumor, but some companies do that, from what I understand. Let's see here. They have a Kill Team ebook up on the GW site for $13 for the regular and the enhanced. See, yeah, that's the thing, is I don't know if the Kill Team rules that they're putting in this new box are their old Kill Team rules, because you're right, there's been an ebook up for probably 3-4 years. So I don't know. It's a very good question. I don't know what they're doing with that. Let's see here. Martin says, Adam, thought I'd let you know I'm trying out your liquid green stuff tip for dirty cloaks on my White King as you speak. It works super well. If you went and watched when I talked about when I showed off the underpainted, faded, the 2 Tomb King guys that I did, or not Tomb King, White Kings, whatever the heck they are, for the Death Army. In those guys, I used a toothpick, which I had cut the pointy part off, so it was just a flat, just like, and then I just dabbed the stuff on, and it makes a great texture. When I get these guys done, they'll be on a show here, obviously, and you can kind of see the texture a little bit more up close. So that'll be cool. Uncle Adam, when and if you get involved in the Blood Bowl re-release, is there a particular team that you're inclined to pick up from past incarnations? Oh gosh. I owned the original, well, maybe not the original, but I owned an original version of Blood Bowl back in the 90s. It might have been 2nd edition. I don't know. Might have been 3rd. I don't even know how. I've never been big into Blood Bowl, but I bought the box set and I played a couple of times with a friend, and it just never struck with me. When they started making the video games, I thought, oh, okay, well, this will be cool. And then I bought the video game and then just realized that I'd basically forgotten how to play. And it just never really held. I'm not a sports fan. That's part of the problem. So that's why I've never been super into Dread Ball or the Blood Bowl, or I just, like, Guild Ball is cool. I played a demo earlier this year, but I'm just like, I'm not a sports fan. So I just don't know why I'd want to play a sports game on the tabletop like that. I think that's part of the issue. So, yeah, I don't know. I would probably go with either humans or dwarves if I had to make a choice. Oh, or maybe undead. Undead would be cool. I could go with them. I would not go with elves, but, I'm not a big elf fan, so. Let's see here. When I'm painting, I always put my pencils in a cup of tea or coffee. No. Hello from Quebec. I just bought an Empire Battalion from Warhammer Old Edition, and now I don't know if I should wait for the Age of Sigmar Free People big box before buying more. I have not heard much about the big box for Free People. There should be War Scrolls for everything that you've got in that Empire Battalion, so I would just start looking at the War Scrolls. If you're very interested in points play, then I would look at the General's Handbook and figure out what things you want to get based off of the points and start kind of figuring that, and then like build a 1,000-point army. If you're not a points player, then I would just build what you think is cool, and then start going from there. That's what I would do, yeah. Let's see here. I bought one of those electric turkey slicer things from the thrift store and made a paint shaker. I was thinking about making a video about it. Cost me less than $10 to make. That's a super good idea. Like if you just buy like one of those electric turkey slicers and then just like attach something to it so you can put bottles of paint inside and just turn it on and shake them, that's a super smart idea, Justin. So yeah, you should make a video about that. That's brilliant. I have a friend who goes to thrift stores all the time. I may set him upon a mission for me so that I can get myself an electric turkey knife and do some paint shaking. Because honestly, I do have some older paints in the basement, and sometimes like old washes, like not like GW washes, they don't really separate much, but like Secret Weapon washes, because there's so much pigment in them, because they're not really a wash, they're technically more of a glaze, they have a tendency, if they sit for like a long time, to really take a lot to make them kind of get mixed up again. So yeah, let's see here. Saw the Kill Team box set also looks interesting, but is really going to be worth veteran players buying a box set for 2 armies they don't collect. Looks like a great start for new players. I would definitely say that it is aimed at new players. I don't think it's aimed at veteran players at all. And I think it's smart of them to do that and make those releases, just because, when you in business, when you start to look at how your sales are going, it's always for every. I can't think of an industry in which it's not important to get new customers. And for a long time, I think Games Workshop was really just not thinking about it, or they just assumed that it was going to come. So, yeah, it's not great. So this is, I think, now with the new leadership and stuff, they've been doing a lot of stuff that I think is right, and I think part of it is trying to get new players. Age of Sigmar is a big step in that direction. This new 40k Kill Team thing is a step in that direction. I think it's just smart to try to do. So, yeah. Can we see an example of your underpainted models? When they're done, yes. Right now, they're down in the basement, and so I'd have to go down there, and you'd have to wait, and it would suck. So, no, yeah. Let's see here. How do you deal with the hobby when you have children? My son is 7 months old, and I spend 1 week to paint one Space Marine. I don't know, because I don't have children. My wife and I, we have a couple of cats who are not going to college. They are already kind of potty trained, mostly. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I talk to friends of mine who have kids, and they say that they generally like to paint later at night, after the kids have gone to sleep, or sometimes, I was going to say sometimes early in the morning, but kids are generally early risers from what I understand. So, yeah, I don't know how that works, actually. That's a good question. A lot of things, I think, are just sort of tough when you have kids, so, yeah. 5 to 6 millimeter glass balls / beads work great as agitators, as they don't react chemically with the paint. That's a good idea. Glass I could see, as long as it's not like a colored glass. It's got like a color like applied to the outside. If it's just straight glass, I could see that. That would make sense. Yeah. No, like a glass bead would probably be the way to go. Because like you're right. Like you wouldn't want to go like lead or white metal or copper or nothing like that. I think that's a good idea. Hey Adam, getting into Warmahordes with the new edition, what do you recommend new painters look for getting a bunch of paints? You want to work on a good primer, and you want to find something that you like as far as a primer is concerned, and then as far as paints are concerned, I'm a big fan of Vallejo. I've heard really good things of P3. I know Sam is a big fan of P3. I've never owned a P3 paint because they just aren't sold in any stores around where I live. But I have kicked around the idea of just ordering a pack of some of them or something like that. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I don't think they were selling P3 paints at the booth at Adepticon this year that I remember. But one of these days I should really get into trying out some P3 paints. Like I said, I know Sam's a big fan, and he's a painting genius. So I got to assume. But yeah. Let's see here. Someone said they can't see anything right now. Are we having technical difficulties? No, stream says it's good, so we should be good. Oh, I lost the chat. Where'd it go? Over here. Okay. Let's see here. First time catching the show live. Awesome. Have you tried out the Total Warhammer? No, I haven't. I'm not really a PC gamer so much. Joey Berry, who some of you might remember, she's still got a YouTube channel, but she doesn't really post to it as much anymore. She was always a big 40K, fantasy, but also 40K YouTuber. And she got, probably 2-3 years ago, got like a real job, basically, at the company that makes the Total War series. Creative Assembly, I think is the name of it, CA. So she works for them now as like a community manager or something like that. And she reached out to a bunch of us YouTubers that we know, because I interviewed her years and years ago. So she reached out and was like, hey, I could send you like a Steam code, so blah, blah. But I don't really play PC games. I'm more of a console dork because I just like sitting on the couch. And I don't really play that many video games at all really these days. So I've been offered, but I haven't really played it. My wife is kind of interested because she's more of a PC gamer. So, but I don't think I can ask Joey if she can just send me a copy so that my wife can play it. I don't think that would work. I think she would probably want some sort of review or something like that, and I don't think that my wife is interested in doing a review. So, but I'm getting an eyebrow, so maybe she is. I doubt it, though. So anyway, yeah. Hey, Adam, do you know of any how-to-paint guides for the Mortark units? If so, where can you find them? I have not come across any, no. Yeah, I have not even put my Mortark together yet because he's, or she, depending on how I build it, is going to be big. And so that's going to be a big model. I've got a bunch of big models. I've got a Terrorgeist for my Death Army. I've got Glocken for my Chaos Army. I've got the Mortark that came with that Start Collecting set for my Death Army. And then I've got a Mutalith Vortex Beast for my Chaos Army. Of those four, the Mutalith Vortex Beast is built, based, primed, highlighted, and started painting. And the rest of them, not. So, yeah, that's a problem that I'm having right now, is that big models are scary to me. So I kind of push off a little bit on them. Oh, I've also got not super huge, but it's kind of big, the Plague Claw Catapult. That's a thing too. So, but that one's been built, based, primed, and that's about as far as it's at right now. Well, base coated, I guess. It's brown. In that I primed it brown with the Krylon paints. So yeah, let's see here. I like to use micro dice as agitators. Cheap and no issues with the paint at all. That's interesting. Yeah, those little 5mm micro dice, those wouldn't be a bad idea. Let's see here. Micro dice as agitators or paint pots. Chaos Disciple, I think I'm saying that right, says P3 paints are really good. Really like the metallics. Yeah, Sam really likes the P3 paints too. I think he really likes the pigments. And that's kind of the important part, obviously, in paints generally. So yeah. Let's see here. My brushes are quickly curling into tip when used. Yeah, no, I really need to... oh, hey, Gianna, how you doing? I really need to figure out... I need to make a painting video about brush care. But first I need to learn how to care for my brushes. A lot of people talk about the expensive brushes they like to use and this and that and the other thing, and I use like the cheap GW brushes and I treat them like garbage. But I'm not a pro painter type guy. I'm a tabletop painter. So I don't know. I would probably get better results if I took better care of my brushes, and I really do need... I mean, I own some of the little Dr. So-and-so's brush soap. I bought it years and years ago. I've just never really used it. So I need to watch a video or something, read a blog post about how to care for your brushes, and then maybe I'll show you how I do it and make a video of it, because, Lord knows I always do love to try to find new content. So let's see here. The Noob Painter asks, how did your award-winning painter friends learn to paint? Were they self-taught or school-taught? Well, that's kind of a question for Sam in one regard, but I also did an interview back in February of 2014. If you go back in the channel and look, I did an interview with Tom Ailes, who is also an award-winning painter. He is actually the last American Slayer Sword winner from the Golden Demon, because in 2013 it was the last Games Workshop Games Day that was in Memphis or wherever the heck it was, and so he attended and he won the Slayer Sword, and they haven't had a Games Day since. So he is what I like to refer to as the last American Slayer Sword winner. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the thing, and in that interview he kind of talks about how he, learned to paint, things like that. But a lot of it is just, nobody really goes to school to learn to paint miniatures that I know of. But you can nowadays. There's tons and tons and tons of videos. Obviously, back then it was reading books, sometimes buying, videotapes, that kind of stuff. But generally, it was, it's mostly self-taught. Some of the things that you can learn in school for art, color theory, stuff like that, is helpful in this. But yeah, I don't know of anybody who goes to school to learn to paint miniatures or even scale models, really. Let's see here. Michael says, "What's your view on bolt action? It's a lot cheaper than 40K and it's just as fun to play." I'm looking forward to not so much bolt action, but Conflict 47, as I mentioned in the past. I'm looking forward to that because, I'm starting to like some historicals, but if it's a historical that I can play with other historicals, but also has a little bit of weird World War II in it, then I'm definitely on board. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. From watching some bat reps for Conflict 47 and even for bolt action, it seems right. Like I did a video just recently about what to do if like your rule set that isn't very good, and sometimes there's just rule sets you're just like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why it's done this way. And then there's other ones where you're like, yep, this totally makes sense. Everything to me is expected. And it totally depends on the person. There are some people who love Infinity, and there are other people like me who are just like befuddled by it. So it's a totally kind of personal thing, one way or the other. And that's kind of the way it works. But for me, it looks as if Conflict 47 and also Bolt Action, and now the new second edition of Bolt Action, they seem to be a little bit like they took some 40K and they modified it and made all the things that were a little janky about 40K better and made that really cool activation system. And so, yeah, I'm pretty much on board. So, yeah. Marcus says you can also clip plastic sprue bits and use them as agitators. Sure, I suppose you could. Would they have the amount of mass that you would want? Like, if you had a piece of sprue and a piece of glass bead or whatever next to each other, would they weigh enough? Because, like, if you put something in the bottle that's really light and you shake it back, it's not going to do as much as if something is a little bit heavier, I'm assuming. I'm no scientist, but I'm just wondering if that's the case, so yeah. Yeah, Glass Biotope says, get brush soap at your art store. Yeah, it's Dr. something or other. I don't remember. It's like a little yellowish tan tin with brown printing on it. And when I say tin, I mean plastic, but it's round, and that stuff, from what I understand, is pretty good. So, Games Workshop just released a paintbrush care video. It's short and simple, but makes a lot of sense. Oh, that's good for them, honestly. Since they sell brushes, you would think they wouldn't want to tell you how to get more life out of them. They'd want you to buy more brushes. But so good on them for doing that. So you guys should check that out. Probably going to be better than mine as far as the information that is involved. But take a look. Let's see here. Some people like hardcore strategic stuff. Other just stuff where you don't have to think that much. Yeah, no, that's true. These days I've not been, like, when I first got into wargaming, like one of the earliest tabletop wargaming games that I played was Battletech. And there was a lot of bookkeeping in Battletech. You had this entire 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper for just one mech, and it had tons of little dots all over it. So like, oh, I took 3 points in my left arm. Okay, ... And there's a lot of bookkeeping in Battletech. And when I was a kid, that was really cool. And now as I'm getting older, I'm not as interested in that kind of stuff anymore, which is why games like that are simpler to some degree, like Age of Sigmar, to some degree Bolt Action, things like that. Skirmish games in general appeal more to me, so that's why. Because honestly, I'm still basically these days now, I'm a big hobby person. Like, one of the reasons that Battletech also isn't very interesting to me is that the models are never really all that great, in my opinion. I've never been super hot about the models. So yeah, that's just kind of the way it works. Let's see here. Any ideas on how to change the 6 matched play modes? A bit more variety would be nice. I haven't really looked into changing them up too much yet. I would love to release at some point down the road, like just like a free PDF that would be like a special, like, let's say Age of Sigmar battle plan that would be like Tabletop Minions branded or whatever. Just put it out there and just be like, hey, here's one you can download for fun, or whatever. But I haven't gotten to that point yet. I need to get better with some of the scenario play until I can really become knowledgeable enough to be able to figure out what I want to do for that. So yeah. Let's see here. Metal Gear says, sad that fantasy is dead, though. I love the Skaven so much, but I don't know. The new ones don't seem appealing to me. I've been really digging the Skaven Plague Monks. I got to paint them eventually, but I've got most of them built, of the 20 that I got in that box. They're just, I don't know. I think the Plague Monks are really super cool, and they're going to match real well with the rest of my Nurgle units, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's see here. Why do you think Games Workshop doesn't sell all the hero models? For example, they stopped selling Thorgrim in Age of Sigmar. I don't know. I'm assuming maybe the molds get old, or they want to resculpt, or maybe they're going to be coming out with something new later. I know a lot of businesses don't want to have dozens and dozens and dozens of SKUs, which is SKU, which stands for something in retail. And I know they don't want to have so many of them because they're so hard to track, and you got to keep so much inventory. So when a company is trying to fix things, sometimes within their own organization, they kind of pare down how many products they have. So, one of the reasons we don't have Tomb Kings anymore, one of the reasons that they're kind of paring back on some of the different armies that they've had in fantasy is just because they can't support all the different armies. People like us, fans or whatever, are always just like, well, why don't they just make even more armies? They should have 50 different armies. Well, because then you make 50 different armies, you're splitting, you've still got your X amount of, potential customers, and now you're selling less of everything, but you have to keep making it, and it's, so I think that's part of the problem, potentially. So let's see here. Adam, do you ever would let paint your armies or minis painting by other people, like from studios or friends? Oh gosh, I generally like to paint my own stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've got some stuff that Sam has painted for me that's more for display kind of stuff that's cool. But otherwise I'm more of I like to paint my own stuff. There are people out there that I know that like to paint their own stuff, but then pay somebody to paint just the cool HQ units, so they look really awesome. But then for me, I'm like, yeah, but now they don't match the rest of my army. Like, even if the colors are right, I'm like, yeah, but that guy's way better than the rest of these guys, and that just bothers me. So that's my own personal thing. So probably not. But I know there's plenty of people out there who do want people to paint for them, who are looking for commission painters and stuff like that. I'm just not generally one of them. So let's see here. What's a good game to start wargaming with? Well, Jack, I would say if you're interested in getting into it at a relatively lower level, I would start off with a gateway game, like I was talking about a little bit before. X-Wing, you don't have to paint anything. That's kind of cool. People like that. People like Star Wars. Kind of teaches you things about line of fire, line of sight, range, that kind of stuff. Activation phases, things like that. So it's a good starter that way. Otherwise, games like Zombicide and Blood Rage and Rum and Bones and a lot of the games that are coming out of Cool Mini or Not these days are designed to sort of be, they're basically designed so that you can, it's a board game kind of, but it's also a miniatures game, and you don't have to paint them, but you can if you want to, and that kind of stuff. So those are kind of good ways to look at it. Otherwise, if you want to go full-blown into straight, regular, what we refer to as a miniatures game or a miniatures wargaming game, Age of Sigmar is great to start with. You don't need to buy any books if you don't want to. You can download everything you need from their website, and then just buy the models you want and play and go from that way. I did I did a video about why Age of Sigmar is a good thing, and if you watch that. Ed says SKU means stock keeping unit. Well, there we go. Now I know what that means. Cool. Let's see here. Any tips for using washes on brighter colors that will apply shading without making them look muddy? Generally, that would be a glaze. So, if you painted something, let's say yellow, lemon yellow, and you wanted to sort of kind of darken it in the crevices a little bit, you would want to figure out how to make a glaze that was of a slightly darker yellow, but not too dark. I don't have a video about how to make a glaze, but I'm sure there's information out there on the internet about it. But that's the difference generally between a glaze and a wash. A wash is basically always designed to darken things a little bit, but also to go more into the crevices. A glaze is designed to also go into crevices a little bit, but it's also designed to help kind of darken a little bit the flat areas, the broad areas, whatever. If you look at Secret Weapon Miniatures, they sell a line of washes, which are technically glazes. And I had a conversation with Mr. Justin from Secret Weapon, and he told me, he's like, they're technically glazes, but if we would have sold them as Secret Weapon glazes, people wouldn't have particularly bought them. So we tell them that they're washes because people know what a wash is. And though these aren't exactly like that, they get the hang of them, and then it kind of works from there. But so yeah, like if you ever see something that says, "Oh, this is a wash," but it's a bright green color, that's not a wash. It's a glaze. Washes basically always have to darken, whereas glazes kind of work a little bit differently that way. So let's see here. In other words, no one paints my minis. Back off. I don't want to say that it's that. That's not the exact thing, but yeah, I do prefer to paint my own stuff. So let's see here. Let me think. What else we got? When they swapped Age of Sigmar, they got rid of all the big name heroes since they were strongly connected to the old Warhammer factions. The Orc Warlord says that makes sense too. Yeah, I bet that probably. I mean, the concept is that it's quite a ways in the future after the end times and everything's kind of blown up. So it would make sense that many of the heroes probably croaked in the end times. So yeah, they're probably not making them as much. So that makes sense too, exactly. Let's see here. Let's see here. Swede, Tim. Yeah, Gianna says, target the wash for those shaded areas, then you will need to highlight after. That's another way to do it too, exactly, yeah. Like I do that with my skeletons, which I'm going to start talking about in about 5-10 minutes. But I generally start off with a base color that is darker, which is like a sand kind of color. And then I take like a sepia wash and I put it on everything. And then I go back and I kind of highlight via dry brushing the raised parts, like the rib cage and the top of the head and stuff like that. And then that's a way to, you know, it's more steps, but it works out pretty well. I'll try to explain a little bit better in a bit. Let's see here. Mark says, I've been thinking of getting an ultrasonic cleaner since catching your video, but was wondering if it could damage the more delicate sort of miniatures. Is that a possible thing? As far as damaging a miniature, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure no. It may, if you're trying to strip paint off of a miniature, whether you put it in ultrasonic or not, you will very likely, in many situations, unglue the model. So the model may come apart, but you just end up, if honestly, in my opinion, that's not a bad thing, because like a lot of times you're going to unglue the model and then you're going to be able to glue it back together again, and maybe there was extra glue on it because that person was bad with glue, so you can kind of take some of that glue off. You can do a lot of stuff, and you basically get to start over, put the model back together again. Maybe you want to reposition it a little bit, you know, do that stuff, and then prime it, and then base color it, and all that stuff. So damage the actual plastic of the model or even the resin, probably not, but you very likely, in most situations when you strip, whether you use, again, like I said, ultrasonic or not, the model will probably come apart at the glue joins, but that's not that big of a deal. You kind of want that, and if you're me, at least, I'd like to reposition that stuff. So yeah. Let's see here. Shaven Skaven says, I picked up a ton of Malifaux at Gen Con. I've been loving it so far. Do you still play? I haven't played in quite a while. I tried getting people around here interested in it. I got Sam, he painted some stuff. I think that his brother painted some stuff, or else Sam painted it for his brother. That seems to be sometimes the way it works. But yeah, so we did play a little bit, but I haven't in a while, and I'd kind of like to. It's a great game. The mechanic of using the card deck instead of rolling dice is, I think, really brilliant, and I know it's getting more and more popular. So, and the models, specifically the newer models, like the plastic models over the last like 2 years, are amazing. You know, for years everyone was always like, "Oh, Games Workshop to make the best models in the world." Not as much anymore, honestly. Like Weird Games is doing some really astounding work. So yeah, it's really cool. But yeah. Let me see here. What do folk think of these standalone games that Games Workshop have, such as Lost Patrol, Kill Team, Stormcloud Attack? I don't think that's a thing. Is Stormcloud Attack a thing? Yeah, Lost Patrol, some of those. Do you find that they are good games in themselves, or just to rope people in? I think that they're doing a lot of different things with those kind of box games. Like, they just had one recently, I forget what it's called, but it comes with 2 Imperial Knights in it, and that's pretty much it. Then there's like some cards and stuff. I think honestly, it's just like an excuse to get people somewhat to buy models. To like, well, you could buy these two models for $120 each, or we'll put two of them in a box for 175 or whatever. And the people are like, well, crap. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I know the Horus Heresy one was big, and people like that one, but I think a lot of people just bought it because they wanted the plastic Horus Heresy models for their own armies. So yeah. Greg Grumpy says, "Hi Adam, saw the interview Terry Litorco made with you. What do you think of the main difference between you two's opinion on Age of Sigmar?" Let's see. That the interview was not this last Adepticon because she and her husband couldn't make it this year, but it was 2 Adepticons ago when we did that interview. I don't think that she's interested in Age of Sigmar. Not anywhere like I am. Lately, from what I know of her, we're friends on Facebook and we chat from time to time. She's been getting more and more into War Machine, and so that's cool. But yeah, I don't think she's interested in Age of Sigmar particularly at all. So let's see here. What do you fill your ultrasonic cleaner with for cleaning your airbrush? Would simple green damage it? I don't think simple green would damage it. Honestly, what I use is just distilled water, and then I usually squirt in a bunch of airbrush cleaner. You can get airbrush cleaner from a lot of different companies. Createx makes it. Iwata makes it. I don't know what's in there. It's probably just soap. I don't know. But there's a lot of companies that make airbrush cleaner, so I'll usually fill it like at least 5/6 of the way with just plain distilled water, and then I squirt some airbrush cleaner in it, and I let it sit in there and do the ultrasonic thing, and it's all vibraty, and it works out really well. Like my airbrush is clean as a whistle. I've had it probably maybe 6 years. I've had it a long time, and it's very clean. And it's just because I always keep it very clean, and also I just keep it in the ultrasonic cleaner. Like I have 2 ultrasonic cleaners because they're small and they're relatively inexpensive, and I have one that's just for my airbrush or airbrushes, and I just leave them in there all the time. And then when I want to take them out, I take it out, put it all together, clean it off, dry it off, and then go to town. And then when I'm done, I put it back in there and start cleaning it, and then just go do other stuff, and it just stays in there. So yeah, let's see here. I just got some Necropolis Knights, and the skeletons are pretty delicate. I don't know what Necropolis Knights is. Is that a... I'm not familiar with that. As far as delicate skeletons are concerned, Wargames Factory made some really great skeletons. They're really cool looking, but they're super delicate. Way more delicate than the ones I'm about to show you here. So they're really hard to use I find, for modeling purposes, especially for gaming. But they're great when you want to have like an arm bone and like a rib cage like on the base of your model. Like if you've got a bigger model and you want to have like a dead skeleton guy like laying there, they're great for that. They're like basically great as like terrain or basing scatter. But actually trying to build one and use it, they are so super crazy thin and tiny that they're just, you touch it and you're going to break it. So yeah. Let's see here. Which armies in Age of Sigmar do you think need better figures or better figures in... I don't know. I'd like to see some new stuff actually for the Free Peoples, which are going to be coming out eventually. The human faction or whatever, the survivors after the end times, really. As far as humans are concerned, I'd like to see some kind of interesting stuff come out of that. I don't know what they're going to do with it particularly, but I think that's what I'd like to see, some new models for that kind of stuff. What do you think of the Varangard now being $120? Is that true? Is that American? The Varangard went up from $100 to $120? Because I got to tell you, $40 per little figure, per horsey guy. That's not a thing. That's not. I wouldn't pay that, certainly. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, no. David asks, you used to work in board games, right? What titles did you work on? No, I never worked in board games. Me and a friend had a small hobby press that we did, where we just did it on the side. It wasn't like a day job. We just kind of messed around and worked on some games that we then sold. There was one that we actually produced that was a card game, and we did get it into distribution through Alliance. Yeah, I think we sold it through Alliance and a couple other like overseas distributors. The old company, and the website's still up. It has been updated since like 2008 or 2009. But it's snarlingbadger.com. Snarlingbadger.com. There are 2 games that are on there. They're both PDFs you can download. One's called Zombie Rally, and that's the card game that we did. And then the other one was called Metal Crushers, which is kind of a robot combat, sort of like gladiatorial robot combat game. But we just did those on the side. Honestly, there was not like it wasn't a company. I mean, we paid taxes and all that jazz, but it was just a partnership of 2 of us, and we did it. It was fun. So yeah, I've never worked on real, titles as it were. But yeah, wow, $120 American according to those guys. That's crazy. Yeah, no. I don't know why they would be so expensive. I don't know why they would raise it so much, because they have my friend Kevin showed me a battle plan or a battalion or whatever those special rules you can get. And it says, oh, you just put it together like this, and then you get this special bonus. And one of them was for 24 Varangard. If you had 24 Varangard and then this and this in this model, that's like, well, that at the time, 24 Varangard was, I don't know, $800 or something. Now it's even more. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's really crazy. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Twitch asks, do you have to take the airbrush apart to clean it in the ultrasonic? Yeah, you do. It's important to take your airbrush apart and clean it that way. If you just dump the entire thing in there, and it won't actually help. So, I mean, most airbrushes are relatively simple to take apart. Now, you don't have to put everything, at least I don't put everything into the thing. So imagine this is an airbrush. It's not a great visual, but there's the end cap that you take off. It's kind of the handle in the back. That you don't have to really wash generally, unless you got something on it, I guess. Then there's like a little nut you unscrew that allows you to pull the needle all the way out. That nut, you don't have to wash that either. You can keep that aside. Then there's usually an assembly that goes in the back of the body of the airbrush that you have to unscrew the entire thing. And there's usually a spring and like a thing and something else. None of that stuff needs to be washed unless, again, like I said, you did something horrible to your airbrush. But those usually don't have any, And then there's the button on top, which pops out of the top once you've pulled this thing apart. That doesn't need to be washed. Everything else needs to be washed. The main body of the airbrush that includes the cup, the needle. I don't wash the needle. I usually like dip it in the stuff and then just clean it off with a paper towel, and then set it aside someplace so it doesn't get bent or beat up. And then there's usually 3 nozzles on the front once you take them all apart, and I put those all in there separately, and then that really does the job. I'm looking down here to make sure that I've got my visual aids in the shot. But yeah, that's basically the case. A lot of the stuff that's at the back end of the airbrush you don't need to put in the ultrasonic because it doesn't have paint touching it anyway, so that stuff isn't important. But the main body, the 3 main nozzles in the front, all those need to kind of go in there and get cleaned out. And you'll be a lot happier if you do, honestly. How do you feel about Games Workshop's new direction over the past 1.5 years? I like it. I think that they are finally waking up to the fact that they are in the 21st century, and that as such, as a company, they need to pay attention to social media, they need to pay attention and actually start marketing in some fashion, and they need to get newer gamers. They need to get new blood into their hobby, because otherwise it's not going to do well for them in the long run. You have to think ahead. For years and years, I think that Games Workshop has constantly looked 6 months out, and that's it. They looked 6 months out, and they're like, we need to make money to make the stockholders happy in 6 months, or maybe a year tops. Now they got to start looking at it of like, if we don't fix things, we'll be out of business in 5 to 10 years, and they don't want to do that. So I think that's been good. So, Snarling Badger, how very Wisconsin. Indeed, that's partially where it came from. The Orc Warlord says, LOL, I own Zombie Rally. Well, thank you. Zombie Rally is a fun game, and we enjoyed playing it, or making it. I did the illustrations, by the way, too, so they're not great. They're kind of cartoony, but they're fun. Let's see here. Which army needs a nerf? I think Everchosen. Since I haven't played the points yet, I don't know. I get complaints from my friend Kevin about my Varangard, and I only have the 3, but I get complaints sometimes because he thinks they're too powerful. But then again, he runs a ton of Chaos Trolls, so let's not even get going down that road. I think that it'll be interesting to see how because the Varangard are going to get played today because they're painted and they will help to fill out the army. So we'll see how I think about them now after I've played them in a points game. It'll be interesting. I'll let you guys know. Let's see here. What do you think of the Iron Jaws? To me, they have very little in terms of different units. They seem to be putting a lot of effort into the Beast Claw Raiders instead. I don't know a ton about orcs. That being said, I did tell my friend Kevin from the game store that I needed him to order me a Mega Boss because I was looking at the model recently, and I was just really well. Actually, a guy hit me up on Facebook through the Tabletop Minions page and showed me a modification that he did to his Mega Boss. And I was just blown away. It's really super good. I'm hoping once he gets it painted that he posts it on the Paint Showcase Club. He should even just paint it on... He should put it on the Paint Showcase Club while it's just built as a work in progress because he did some really super cool things with the head. But I was looking at the model again just on the GW site, and I was just like... And this idea came to me. I've never been a display painter, and I still don't know that I'm as good as a normal display painter, but I all of a sudden have this idea, and I want to do like a little diorama, and I want that orc boss to be like a big portion of it, or the Mega Boss or whatever. So I told my friend Kevin, I'm like, order me one of those, and when you get it, and I'll buy it. So this is down the road, but it's something I want to do because I think it's a great model, that big Mega Boss, and I have an idea of what I want to do with it in this kind of display. So we'll see how it goes. My friend has 3 Varangard, and they smashed through an army of Fire Slayers. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty good. If I remember, and you guys, I don't have my book near me, but if you guys look it up, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're 360 points for the 3 of them. If you just get 3, I think they're 360 points. So they're a lot of points. Don't get me wrong. You know, they're 3 guys, but they add up to like one big character, kind of. You know what I mean? As far as like a lot of the bigger characters in Age of Sigmar, when you look at the points, are anywhere from 300 to 400 to 500 points. So yeah, they're pretty powerful. Let's see here. Games Workshop has a strange way of using different currencies. Some stuff is really inexpensive for euros. Some is really inexpensive compared to pound or to dollar. Yeah, I'm not sure how they do that stuff either. I mean, I know that Australia gets kind of wrecked as far as like they have to pay a lot more. And the excuse is always like, well, we got to ship it all the way over there. Okay, well, fine. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how they do that stuff, honestly. It's interesting. Slagarth says, I've been told you run Windex through your airbrush in place of airbrush cleaner and it'll work just as well. Could you use Windex in the ultrasonic without worrying about any damage? Probably. I think that there's Windex with ammonia, and that you might want to look into because as not being something you would want to use. Because ammonia could... I know that there's brass parts, I think, in many airbrushes. So... I don't know if ammonia and... I'm not a scientist. I say that all the time, but it's true. I don't know if ammonia and brass will get along over time. So that would be a thing I would look into. There's probably blog posts about it out there. I know that Les Bursley, a.k.a. awesomepaintjob.com, I think, he cleans his airbrushes... Like, he doesn't keep a big bucket of it or whatever and throws airbrushes in, but every once in a while when he needs to completely clean his airbrush, he uses fingernail polish remover, which is basically acetone. And that will destroy any kind of acrylic paint that's inside your brush. So if you ever have a paintbrush that is really like, I can't figure out why it won't work, it keeps backing up and I get the bubbles, and it's really plugged somehow, you get yourself some of that really smelly acetone type fingernail polish remover, and it should really clean your airbrush. But again, I don't know that you would necessarily soak it in there, not over time probably, but you would get it in there, clean it, make sure everything's cool, and then probably drop it in some other kind of water or something like that. That'd be a good way to do it. So yeah. What made you talk about GW possibly going out of business? Just their previous business model, like up to the last year and a half. The way they were going, they were just doing a lot of things that didn't make a lot of sense, and they were doing a lot of stuff, and they were seeing their actual sales like drop. There was the previous CEO, Tom Kirby, I think maybe is his name, but I don't remember exactly. He, in a report to the stockholders, and this is maybe 2-3 years ago, he used the word survivability in like the first paragraph of his report to the stockholders, and it was basically about how like we think that we've increased the survivability of the company, by making this change, which is never good when you have to talk about whether or not the organization is going to survive in the first paragraph of your annual report. So that's probably one of the reasons they got rid of him, because he was driving the boat strangely. And the new guy, who I don't even know that guy's name, seems to be doing some stuff that makes some more sense. So that's why I was talking about it. All right, it's 10 after 10. I should probably talk about some skeletons, but I'm glad that you guys are asking questions about airbrush. I'm going to be doing another airbrush video soon, which will be the 4th in the series, because I've done 3 so far. One about an intro to airbrushing, one that was about, I forget what the second one was about. Oh, the second one was about safety, very important. And the third one was about like how to mix paints for airbrushing, if you take a non-airbrush paint, and kind of how to do that. So I'm going to come up with a 4th video soon, and we'll go from that direction. Let's see here. Warning, do not put acetone in your ultrasonic cleaner. Yeah, probably not. I can see that. That makes sense. All right. Good morning from Argentina. Is it too late to join in? Certainly not. I just saw that, so it's not too late. And actually, I'm just about to talk about my skeletons. So I'm going to make this thing happen and do that. So there you go. There's some skeletons. All right. Well, we're done. No, I'm kidding. All right. So these skeletons are technically Tomb King skeletons. And I noticed when I set them next to vampire count skeletons, these guys are thicker. Like, they have slightly bigger heads and they have slightly thicker arms. So that's kind of interesting. I got these skeletons from a guy, and they were basically used. They were used skeletons, and they were all on square bases. And so I bought them. I think they were primed. No, they weren't primed. They were either primed black or not primed at all. I forget now. So I bought them, knocked them off the square bases, put them on round bases, textured the bases. Then I started painting them and going from there. And so, but they were basically all built. Some of them I modified. So again, because these are Tomb Kings, you can see they've got the big kind of tower shield. Come on, you're going to focus. How about if I put this here? What, here? Does that work? Does that work? How about this? No? All right, so there we go. That almost focused. Let me get my hand in there. Okay, so like that's one of the big tower shields for Tomb Kings. The thing about these skeletons is that they don't look super Egyptian. You know what I mean? A lot of the Tomb King stuff obviously is a very heavy Egyptian bent. These guys, especially if you paint them mostly with silver metallics instead of gold, don't look that Egyptian in my mind. So, that's kind of what I did. But on some of them, I pulled off the big tower shield and I threw on some of the Vampire Count shields. Like, this is a guy who's carrying basically like a coffin lid as his shield, which makes sense, like, for the Vampire Counts aesthetic. Okay, so I've done that on a couple different guys. There's another one in here who's got, where is that guy? Nope, that's not him. Nope, that's not him. Here he is. This is also a Vampire Counts shield. There's a bunch of weird ones in the Vampire Counts box, so I just popped off the shield and just popped in a different one. So let's see here. Keeping them, trying to make them so they don't look too Egyptian, I'm definitely going with the silverish type metallics, so it looks more like, iron or whatever, and does not look like brass and gold. That was like, when you looked at Tomb Kings, they were always blue and gold. That was like the big color combination. And these guys, they don't look super Egyptian, but I wanted to make sure that they looked really, really not Egyptian, so I stayed away from gold basically completely. Even the like rivets, like on this guy's thing, are still silver. You know what I mean? They're not like a brass or any kind of color like that. I completely stayed away from gold, which I thought was probably pretty important for these types of models. So these guys are spear and shield, and you'll be glad to know, maybe not, I actually tried some wet blending. Sam will be glad to know that I actually tried some wet blending for once, and I did it on the shields. So I would paint like on, let's see if I can find it. And it's really subtle because everything I paint is generally pretty subtle. But on some of these, like I would do a gray, and then I would take like a lighter or darker gray and then like kind of blend them together and stuff like that. I'm trying to find where one of them on here, he's got like this one maybe.
Like it's lighter gray at the top and not as dark. It's pretty subtle because I like to paint that way. I like to paint subtly. But yeah, so all right. So the way I started with these guys is, like I said, I bought them used, knocked them off their squares, put them on rounds. Then I put texture stuff on the base, and it's predominantly all CA glue and baking soda, which I'm going to make a video about soon. Here's a little behind the scenes. The video that went up on Friday was the second video that I filmed that night, because originally I was going to do a video about how I do my baking soda bases, and it didn't go well. I glued a base to my finger. After that, I glued the base to the table. It was because it was really hot in there, and I was kind of flustered. I had to put all my equipment back together because I had taken it to use for work, and then it was hot, and I had the camera in the wrong spot. Everything went wrong, and then I was like, okay, I'm not finishing this video. I need to come up with a new idea. So I went into my phone and looked at my other ideas, because I constantly put episode ideas in my phone, and then I came up with the video that I did on Friday. So I'm going to come back to the baking soda bases eventually soon. I think I know what I need to do for the camera now. But you'll notice two things. Number one, you'll see that kind of bone color in there. That's the base color that I spray painted everything. You'll also notice that there's poster putty still stuck in there. The most recent batch of poster putty that I bought is crazy sticky. And so I have not been able to get it out of most of the bases, because I stick these to wooden paint stirrers like this that you get at the like the hardware store. When you buy like a gallon of paint, they give you one of those free, or several of those free wooden paint stirrers. So I take those and I use poster putty, and I stick 4 of these guys to a thing, and then I can paint them in series and then pick up another one. So I did 12 of these, which is why there's 12. There were three sticks. Anyway, I couldn't get it off the bottom mostly, which is the first time this has ever happened to me. So I got a bad batch of poster putty. So that happens, but whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter particularly. But anyway, the reason I'm showing you this is because if you can see it, it's a little too. There is a sand color that I spray painted the entire models in, and it's a Krylon camouflage sand color. So I spray painted them, from the top. So I would have them all set like this, and I'd spray them, and then I would knock them all down onto their backs, which is why there's paint on the underside. And then I would spray them, to catch up underneath the chin and up underneath the rib cage and all that stuff. And then I would go from there, and then I would flip them over onto their fronts once they were dry, and then spray them from behind and do all that stuff so that they were completely all that sand color from Krylon. I did a video, my only review so far on the channel. It's about the Krylon spray, and it's great stuff. Krylon camo, if you can find it, it's great for skeletons, because it's like just you're priming and you're also base coating the sand kind of tan color you want for them right away. I did a video about how to quick paint skeletons, and I basically followed that same thing, but I've actually tweaked it a little bit. So what I did was, once I made them the sand color, the next thing I did was I used sepia wash, which is the Seraphim Sepia from GW, and I covered pretty much all the bone. I did not do like the shields and sepia and stuff like that, because I'm going to be painting those separately later, but I painted everything, covered basically everything that's bone colored with the sepia wash. Okay, so it gets into all the crevices there, in between the ribs, down the spine. You can see it. You might be able to catch it. Like up underneath the rib cage, you'll see it's a brownish color. So I get the sepia wash everywhere except for the shields, the helmets, the spears, stuff like that. Let that completely dry. Then I take a bleached bone color and I dry brush everything bone color. Now that's where I break from the video that I've done in the past, because in the video I've done in the past, the next step after you've done the wash is to go through and paint the shields and the helmets and all that jazz. But I started thinking about it, and the trick is that if I do the dry brush after I've painted the shield, let's say, and I do the dry brush on the arm and the shoulder, okay, well, I might get some dry brush onto the shield, which I've already painted. Now I have to go back and repaint the shield because I got dry brush on it. So what I did instead is that after I put the wash on in all the bone areas and I let that dry, I then did my dry brushing with a bleached bone color, knowing that if I got it onto parts that I didn't want to get it onto, like on the helmet here, or onto the shield, or onto the, you know, the shaft of the spear, then I'm going to paint those later on, so I'm covering up my dry brushing mistakes. So I did the dry brushing, and then on a lot of these guys, specifically the ones that don't have helmets, I even took some white. And I just did like the tops of their heads. I don't know if this is going to focus or not. So I just did the tops of their heads, like the top of their head has been bleached by the sun. So, you know, you've got, if you look at it there, you can see there's like more of a tan color towards the bottom part, and it's more white towards the top. I did the top of the shoulders with some white. And again, this is just very light dry brushing. But that's how I did basically the bone color on all these guys. Once I had that part all done, the bone color was basically all done, then I started doing the shields, the helmets, the spears, and that kind of stuff. And when you have them on those sticks, you can get this assembly line going. And it works great, where you're just like, okay, I've got my metallic paint, I'm doing spearheads. And you just go doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop, then you go to the next one, and you do those, and you go to the next one, and you do those. By the time you're done with the third stick, 12 guys, the first one's dry. So now you can go on to the next thing. So now you're doing, you know, the shafts of the spears or whatever. I changed up the color on the shafts of the spears. Some of them are more of a gray. Some of them are more of a brown, just to make them look different. I changed up also the colors of the shields. Some of them are gray. Some of them are red, which I really kind of like, actually. And some of them are brown. If I can find a brown one. Oh, here's one of them. This is one of the better ones with the, what do you call it? The wet blending. Sorry, the wet blending. This one, you can see the wet blending a little bit better there. Now here's a brown one. So I just wanted to have, I didn't want to go super crazy colors. I didn't want to go super, come on, focus. You check it. Anyway, so I didn't want to go crazy colors. I wanted to go pretty simple colors and do all that kind of stuff. So I just did those. I painted all the shields, and then I painted all the helmets, and then I painted all the, you know, all that stuff. Then I went back and did some washes. So, you know, I threw a bunch of darker washes on this guy, but he's got that part that's kind of peeled off of the covering on his shield. Well, it's got a rip there, so I went and put some lighter color on it so that it looks like it's not as old, you know, like it's a relatively new rip. I did the metallics, and then I put, you know, dark washes over them, because these guys, again, they're skeletons. They came out of the ground. They should be dark. They should be dirty. They're not hanging out, you know, in church. They're coming out of a graveyard. A couple of the models have these cool pieces of parchment stuck to the front, which remind me of basically like purity seals, you know, from like 40K a little bit. And so I put extra effort into those guys. It's just basically a base of bleached bone, and then again the sepia wash, and then a little tiny bit of dry brushing, again with the bleached bone on the edges and stuff like that, just to bring it back a little bit, and then just little silver dots on the little nails that hold them in. And I don't know, I think they turned out cool. So yeah, a lot of these models are very simple to do, and they did go very quickly, surprisingly. But yeah, I was really happy with the way they turned out. And then once the skeleton parts, all the bone parts were done, all of the shield parts, all of the helmets, all of the spears, all those parts were done, then I hit the bases. And the bases are just a very simple, it's like a gray color, and I forget exactly what gray color it is, but it's just, you know, find your own base colors. You like find the colors you want to do for your bases, but then like write it down. I have it in my phone somewhere, and then just keep track of it that way. So did all the bases in like I think it's like a gray. Then I throw a brown wash. I don't know if I'm able to show you the bases very well. So then there's like a brown wash, like Agrex Earthshade. And then after that, I do a little bit of black wash, like right kind of on between the legs to kind of give them a bit of a shadow. You know what I mean? So it's like on the base between the legs, between the feet. There's a little bit of black there where there's not around the edges. And then I go back and I dry brush with another gray to catch the like rocks and the raised parts and stuff like that. And then just a black brush-on primer is what I use for the ridges, the edges of the bases. Some people like brown, some people like gray, some people like green. I've always been a fan of black, and I always use like a real matte. I use, I think, Reaper brush on black primer, and I just go around the edges real quick, and usually 2 coats, and that makes them real nice. And you know, if you do it right, you don't get too many bumps and chunks and stuff in it and everything like that, and it just looks like black plastic almost again. So I've had people ask me in the past, like, well, how did you not get paint on the plastic edges of your bases? And I'm like, that is paint. I painted them black again. But yeah, you can see some of the kitty litter. You can see some of the, like that's the texture. When you use baking soda and CA glue, it's a very, very fine texture, which looks more to scale in my mind than sand. Because sand, if you were to make it to scale next to a person who's 28 millimeters tall, it would be like they'd be standing in a field of rocks, and doesn't look as cool, in my opinion, as this. I do have a rock on there. You can see a bit of that might be a piece of cork. I think that's a piece of cork, which is fine. The cool thing about, like, see that little dune, the little peak there? I didn't do that. That's the CA glue and the baking soda. If you put the CA glue on thick enough, and then you just sprinkle enough of it, you will get these crazy little kind of like peaks and dunes almost. Like that's kitty litter, that thing in the front there. But the rest of that bumpy texture, I didn't do that. It just sort of happens. It's kind of like that GW Crackle paint. If you don't put it on thick enough, if you just put on a thin layer of it, it will just sit there and not do anything. But if you put on if you glob it on, you will get really crazy thick cracks and stuff like that, and it looks really cool. So this is kind of the same way. And when I eventually get this base video done properly and don't swear during all of it, then you'll see kind of what I mean, hopefully. So yeah, but so this is the skeleton, part of the skeleton horde. There will be 20 of these spear guys eventually. So I've got to do I got another 8 of them done in the basement. Like they're basically built and primed and the whole deal, and they've got their base coat of sand color. They just haven't gotten to the next step. So these guys there'll be 8 more of those. Then I'm going to have 20 sword and shield guys. So I'll have a unit of 20 as sword and shield, unit of 20 as spear and shield, and then I also have 20 archers who were also used in that same lot that these guys came in, and I'd have to knock them off their square bases, put them on rounds, texture the bases, and then go down that road. So I'll have a total of 60 skeletons in that army to begin with, along with Necromancer, Cairn Wraith, Tomb Banshee, White King with Black Axe, White King with Tomb Blade, or whatever the heck he's called, then the 5 Hex Wraiths, Terrorgeist, eventually a Mortark. So that's kind of which way I'm heading with my death army. Let's see here. I think you guys have probably been chatting as I've not been answering questions as I've been talking, which is totes fine. Let's see here. Justin Waller says, I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. I see what you did there, Justin. That's from episode 2 or 3 of the Star Wars, one of the prequels. I got that. That's nice. Let's see here. Jiminy Christmas asks, how far are we through the live stream? About 3/4 of the way through. It is 10:30 where I am. I've got about another half an hour, and then I have to be done. But I just went through and showed off a bunch of skeletons. I like this shield quite a bit too. I think that one's really cool. And if you painted that with all the metallics being in gold, it's totally Egyptian then. Like that guy's got the helmet, and all that stuff, and it just looks totally Egyptian. But when you just don't paint it in those types of colors and you make them real dirty and grungy, you can still get away with it. And they don't look that Egyptian then. You can make them fit with the rest of your like normal normal vampire counts types guys. The trick is to also, I think, make it so that the vampire counts skeletons don't look too vampire-y, because then you're kind of going the other direction. If you just want to make them look generally undead, I think that this is the way to go. All right. I'm going to switch back to camera over here. So, let's see here. Murray Sports Network says CA glue. CA glue is cyanoacrylate glue, otherwise known generally as super glue. That's what CA glue is, and it works with the what do you call it? It works with the baking soda. If you put just a lot of CA glue on the base, use like a toothpick, cocktail stick overseas, and use it to sort of spread it around. And as it's still wet and everything like that, you just sprinkle baking soda all over the top of it. and it does act as a bit of a catalyst to the CA glue, and it hardens it up very quickly. And I think part of that reaction is sort of how you get those little peaks sometimes on the bases. So I love using it. It's my favorite way to base, and like I said, I'm going to eventually do a video about it if I can make it so that I don't glue things to myself as much. Yeah, we'll go how that goes. Let's see here. You should base your skeleton on other skeletons so that you get other spooky skeletons. Oh, yeah. Well, see, I would think the bases are sort of small, but I'm going to definitely probably have on some of the bigger things, like that Terrorgeist, he's going to have a lot of spooky skeletons all over the base of his model, I think. And then maybe, if I could find a model, maybe like a Bretonnian or an Empire guy, too, who's like freshly dead. That might be kind of cool. Maybe he'll be stepping on somebody. Like if I could find like a Bretonnian knight or an Empire knight, and then one of his big claws is like stepping on him, that'd be kind of cool. But it's going to take some work. Does anyone know if actual GW stores sell the exclusive items that local hobby shops don't anymore, like Lamenter's Yellow Glaze? That's a good question. I don't know. We don't have a Games Workshop store anywhere near where I live. Like it would take me nearly hour and 3/4 to drive to a GW store. Like there's nothing in the middle part of Wisconsin. There's only a couple in the southern part of Wisconsin, so I haven't been to one in a really long time. Ca is calcium. No. Well, I mean, it probably is, but in this situation, Ca glue is cyanoacrylate, not calcium glue. I don't even know if they make calcium glue. Let's see here. Have you tried the Vallejo Sandy Paste basing compound? It's very, very fine, and you can get the same weird wave patterns with it. I haven't. I've heard of it, and I've just never come across it in a store, so I might look into it. With this, I find the reason it works well for me is because I can spread the CA glue very easily around the feet on the bases of the guys. You know, I can spread it around and then let it sit, and it takes a bit of a while to dry, whereas textured paints, I have used the GW ones, and sometimes it's really hard to get it squished into all the spots you want to get squished into. Actually, the textured paints for GW, the only ones that I really use I use them for like dirt on tank treads. So like if you're building a Rhino and it's completely painted and finished, just before you put on the spray varnish to make everything matte, I just take some of the brown textured paint and put it on the tank tread so it looks like there's gritty dirt on a tank tread. But otherwise I don't use that stuff generally too much. The crackle paint stuff I have used on a couple of my bigger bases, but I paint over it. So like I don't use the color as it is, like if it's red or brown or whatever, I just use it for the texture, and then I prime over the top of it, and then, you know, paint it from there on. And that actually works out relatively well. What paints did you use to paint the wood parts of the skeletons? I generally use like a chocolate brown from Vallejo. I use like a medium, like a leather brown, sometimes from Vallejo. I think I have a leather brown color. I don't remember what that's called, from GW. The red is maybe a flat red. There's a lot of washes on top of these two, because I like to use washes a lot to like darken up and modify things, and then I'll go back and I'll dry brush to sometimes lighten them back up again, like the highlights and the raised areas. But yeah, I use a lot of weird different stuff as far as colors are concerned, really. So why don't you use the vampire ones? You know, the new skeletons. I do for the sword and spear guy, or sorry, the sword and shield guys. I use the vampire ones. These guys, the reason I use these is because I bought them super cheap used from a friend, and they were already built. So I just had to knock them off the square bases, put them on round bases, and go to town. If they would have been too Egyptian looking, then I wouldn't have used them. Like, because some of the, in that lot that he had of skeletons, he also did have some sword and shield ones, but the swords for the Tomb Kings were those weird crescent-shaped swords, and those looked too Egyptian for me. So I'm like, well, I'm going to stick with the Vampire Counts version for the sword and shield guys, and I'm going to kind of stick with these, which are technically Tomb Kings, for the spear and shield guys. And honestly, these spears are a lot thicker than the spears that come with the Vampire Counts, which I kind of like because they're sturdier, and like I'm not as afraid of breaking them off. So yeah, so it was honestly just because all of a sudden a friend of mine was like, hey, I've got a whole bunch of skeletons, and I bought them from him for cheap. So if I was buying them brand new, I probably just would have stuck with the Vampire Counts ones, but these turned out actually pretty well. So let's see here. 18 Tomb King skeletons were like 18 in a box. Vampire skeletons are 10 for the same price. Is it 10 or is it 12? You're probably right. I think it is 10. Hello from the UK. I'm in the process of creating my own skeleton army, deciding to whether to keep it classic bone color or make it a glowing necrotic green. GW's been doing a lot of that lately. Like, you've been seeing more and more of their paint jobs. Like, the Hex Wraiths are kind of like ghostly, kind of whitish, bright green color. The the Banshee, Tomb Banshee, she's kind of painted that way, especially if you look like in the app at some of their newer paint jobs. Even the Karen Wraith, the top of the Karen Wraith is like a normal cloak color, but then the bottom part of it's all bright green. You know, it's like bright green highlighted with a lot of white to make it kind of glowy. That's totally cool. You know, you can do it however you want. I wanted to make them look dirty and kind of, you know, like recently brought out of the ground, because that's kind of what I like. But yeah. No, don't waste precious Bretonnian models on bases. They are endangered now. Well, another thought that I had actually was to find some Bretonnians, some models or something like that, and then make molds, not molds, but, well, kind of molds. Press molds is what they're known as, where there's a material you can buy. It's called Instamold, I think, and it's like a clearish plastic stick. You heat up like a coffee mug full of water in the microwave to get it boiling. You drop it in there. It gets malleable. You pull it out. You take the thing that you want and you press it into it. And then you take that and you drop it into a glass of cold water, and it hardens that mold. And now you can take green stuff and press it, or whatever, and press it into that mold. So I could make, basically it would be very easy to make a copy of just like a part of a Bretonnian, and then the rest of him would look like he was underground. You know what I mean? Like he'd been squished into the ground to some degree. So I might do something like that, because you're right, the Bretonnians are becoming a little bit more hard to find. So I'll either do something like that, or I'll just use some other model that I might already have. I've got some Reaper, like, you know, Knights and stuff like that I could just use apart from them, or again make a press mold. Press molding is specifically for terrain and for bases and things like that, is also on my list of eventual coming up soon. Well, maybe soon is a strong word, but coming up, episodes, videos is the word I'm thinking of. Let's see here. What kind of spray varnish do you use? I've had some trouble with GW and Army Painter ones. I use Tester's Dull Coat. That is my favorite matte varnish. Tester's Dull Coat. D-U-L-L-C-O-T-E. It's not coat like a coat you would wear. It's like C-O-T-E, which is not really a word. That's my favorite stuff. From what I understand, it's hard to get in Europe because it probably changes your DNA or something, or your chromosomes. It's really not good to use indoors. Do not use it indoors. But it is the mattest of the matte varnishes, in my opinion, and it's the only thing I'll use these days on my models. I mean, there are times when I will spray a gloss coat on them, just knowing that I'm going to put dull coat on them later, and the gloss coat's only there because I can put it on kind of thick and it will help protect sometimes, but you have to be kind of wary of it, because then to cover up that gloss coat, you have to use more dull coat. And the thing about matte varnishes, no matter who you buy them from, the thicker you put on the matte varnish, the less matte it becomes. It just is something to do with physics. So you have to put on light coats of matte. If you put on a matte varnish, even dull coat, thick, it will not be as matte as if you put on thin coats. It's just the way it works. I don't see why there isn't a wood brown paint. Well, Games Workshop wouldn't do that because they wouldn't be able to copyright wood brown, but Reaper, Vallejo, a lot of other companies are totally, I'm sure there's probably some sort of wood brown color that you could go with. Blake says, does anyone else realize that the Skeleton Horde is the 8 army with the most models, and since the skeletons require strength in numbers, I feel they are at a disadvantage? I'm not sure what that means exactly. They do need a lot, though. Yeah, you do need a lot of skeletons. Like, 10 skeletons is like, I think 10 skeletons is 80 points. So yeah, they're kind of like the goat people, the beastmen, in that they're, you know, pretty inexpensive that way, points wise. Let's see. Why do you bother to put them on round bases? I mean, it doesn't matter anyway, or does it? Totally, for me, it's aesthetics. I've always preferred. One of the reasons I didn't play fantasy is because I didn't like square bases. I don't know why. I dislike square bases, so I put them on round bases. I play against people who use square bases because they used to play regular fantasy, and that's fine. I have no problem with it. But for me personally, I'm like, I'm going to put them on rounds just because I love the look of it. And again, like I said, I'm more of a hobby dork than I am an actual strategy and gaming dork. So for me, they had to go on rounds. And it doesn't, especially with skeletons, it doesn't take much to pop them off of the square bases because their feet are so small. You just get a little knife under there and just pop them right off, and it works out pretty well. So yeah, that's exactly it. Talk about bones. You could go for Mearse Miniatures, the Jutes from the Darklands range. An undead faction would fit in VA. I think you meant VC, Vampire Counts. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about Mearse Miniatures. I'll have to take a look at their website or something like that. Let's see here. Jeremy agrees with me. Dullcoat is the best stuff. Yes. Pascal also agrees with me. Tester's Dullcoat, indeed hard to find in the Netherlands. Yeah, it's from what I just read something not too long ago about how it's I don't want to say it's outlawed in the EU, but it is probably very hard to find because they're concerned about its poisonousness. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, don't ever use it indoors if you can help it. Always, which is why, like, I have a tendency to make this big push in the fall to get as much stuff done as possible so I can dull-coat it quickly before it becomes a frozen hellscape outside and then I can't spray anything out there. So, because I will not use it in the house. What I hope is eventually to find a matte varnish that I can spray through an airbrush that I like. And I haven't yet, but I'm hoping to, because then that would allow me to matte varnish things even in the winter. So we'll see how that goes. I've got a couple of things I've looked at. I know Vallejo makes one, but I'd like to test it first. We'll see how it goes. Zandos Dwarf King says, we don't have cool varnishes in Europe, but at least we have Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs. Yeah, we don't have Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs here in America because they're concerned about kids choking on prizes, which I guess, I don't know, whatever. It's interesting. Josh McCarthy says it causes cancer only in California. Well, that may be the case. I don't know. Pascal says, I've had issues with Army Painter Anti-Shine. Yeah, I've never had great luck with it. I used it. We used it once on something, and I forget what the heck it was. I've not used it on any of my models, but I used it at a friend's place, and it just is not. It's not as matte as you would like. We were painting something at the game store. I forget what, and it was just like, this is much shinier than I thought. So. Let's see here. Mr. Hobby flat top coat all the way. I'll have to look into Mr. Hobby flat top coat. I did use Winsor & Newton made a brush-on matte varnish in their Galleria line, I think is what it's called. Came in a glass bottle. You got it like at your art supply store in like the fancy, fine art area. And I used to use that, and that worked pretty well. It's still not as good as Dull Coat, but that was of the brush-on varnishes, that was one of the best ones I found. But I haven't used it in a long time because I just use Dull Coat generally. Let's see here. Where can I buy round bases in bulk? I have an Orcs and Goblins army, but need to rebase and repaint. I'm in Europe. Thanks for the good content. Well, you're welcome. I buy my round bases in bulk from a friend of mine who is a bit seller on eBay. So I would tell you to go look on eBay. That's one place that you would probably find them. There are other companies out there, I think, that do them too. I think I bought a big bag of them once at Gen Con about 2-3 years ago too. That's a place, but that's a hard thing. You don't go to Gen Con just to buy some bases. That would be silly. But yeah, I'd look on eBay, honestly. That's probably one of your best bets. Like if you want to get really fancy, like resin bases with all kinds of cool textures and stuff like that, there's plenty of places out there that do that. But if you're just looking for plain black ones, I'd look on eBay probably. Let's see here. Has anyone tried dipping miniatures into a big pot filled with paint? No. Well, maybe someone has. I haven't. I have dipped miniatures into a wood varnish before. One of the ways that you can kind of paint is you can take your models and you can put on just the base coats, like, oh, the shield is going to be red and the body's going to be this color, and you do all that stuff, and then you take that model and then you dip it into like a Minwax, like a wood varnish that has a color to it. So the color gets into all the dark crevices, and you also completely coat the model in this polyurethane, which is going to protect it in theory. The problem is that it's usually way too much dip. You get way too much. It pools around the feet. It's a whole thing. Plus sometimes you drop the model into the pot, which I've done. Lord knows. This is back 8 years ago when I first started painting and I heard about dipping. You can also do it where you just use a brush and you just paint that varnish onto the models. That also works too. I have seen people set up, and this is crazy, like they will dip the model into the Minwax, pull it out, attach it to a drill, spin the drill so the excess gets all, shoots all over the backyard, and then that's how they paint their models, and they can quick paint like lots and lots of models that way. They don't usually look great, but if you're looking for that kind of thing, you can do it. Another company that does something like that instead of using Minwax is Army Painter. They make this big, like these tins, they're like half a pint or something like that, of this. Basically, it's the same stuff as Minwax, only thinner. But yeah, there's different companies out there that have done that kind of stuff. The Grab team says Vallejo matte is perfect in an airbrush. Well, I want to get some and try it out because I really want to go that direction. Blue 3 also says Vallejo matte acrylic varnish, 26.518. There are a few different versions I've seen, so that number is semi-important. This for me has been the best and one of the only that doesn't seem to frost, so I'll have to try that out. As well, because I would like to try out some of that stuff, because the chat has a tendency to go away. I'm going to quickly take a picture of it to remind me of myself. There. So I'm just taking a picture with my phone, so now I have a note of the exact number. Foreground makes MDF bases, according to Moritz 606, which is true. If you're not looking for like the cool bevels, you know, like hang on, the you know, see how the edges are slanted there? Like that's a GW base. And then if you're playing like, let's say War Machine or something like that, they have the rounded bases on the edges. But if you're just looking for straight edges like that, there are companies out there that make MDF ones super cheap that you can buy like by the pound or whatever, and then they work out great for basing too. So that's if you want to go that direction. Let's see here. Garrett G says, I use Pledge Floor Polish, formerly Future Shine, which I've heard of, and I can run it through my airbrush with no problems to put a flat coat and seal my models. Really? See, I always thought that Pledge and Future Shine were shiny. I didn't think they were flat. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that. There's a lot of people who use like Future Shine and some of those types of floor polishes and then mix colors in with them, predominantly dark colors, and then they use that kind of as their dip or as a wash. They make their own washes that way. If you just take paint and put it into water and thin it down to use it as a wash, it won't work. It'll kind of work for a second. You will put it on there and it will look like it's working, but then just as it's about to dry, the surface tension in the flat areas, just as it's about to dry, will start to suck pigment out of the crevices, and then you will get these weird sort of what they're called high tide markings. Like, you know when you were down by the beach near an ocean or whatever, and the tide comes in, and then the tide goes back out again, and you can see where the tide was because there's a bunch of dead fish and crap over here? That's what a high tide mark is, okay? You get some of that sometimes if you make your own washes just straight out of water and paint, because at the last second in the big flat areas when the water is just about to dry, the surface tension sucks the stuff out of the crevices and you get these weird rings and it looks gross. So you need something, an additive, to put into the water to make it break the surface tension. So a lot of people there's a lot of different things you can use, but a lot of people will use things like floor polish and stuff like that, because floor polish is designed to break the surface tension on your floor so it doesn't it dries quicker, basically, that kind of stuff. So at least I think that's right. But yeah, you definitely want, if you're going to make your own washes, there's a lot of recipes online on how to do it, but it's not just water and paint. When I very first started painting Battletech miniatures, that's what I thought. I'll just water down some paint, it'll look awesome. And it didn't look awesome. So let's see here. Maybe slight off topic. Have you used Gale Force 9's new Tanks skirmish game? I haven't played it. I got like a starter intro thingy in my swag bag at Adepticon this year. So it's got like maybe 2 tanks that came on a sprue that you could put together and like just a description of kind of how to play. But I haven't really seen much about it. I don't know if it's been taking off or not. I don't know. It sounds interesting. To me, honestly, it sounds a little bit like X-Wing, you know, like as far as like with the movement templates and stuff like that, but you still got to put them together and paint them. It's an interesting concept, but I don't know much about it, frankly. Let's see here. Is eBay the best way to get bits? Are there dealers with independent sites that are popular? A lot of the guys who are on eBay some of them also have independent sites. I know there's a company that I've bought from before called Horde O Bits, and I think they have an independent site. I haven't bought bits online in a long time, amazingly since I stopped playing 40k, because I was buying bits to make conversions from 40k, and now with Age of Sigmar I don't convert as much. That being said, I do believe I did buy extra Vampire Counts skeleton style shields, just so I had extra ones to replace these guys if I wanted to. The big shields. Anyway, but I haven't done much of them. I just bought a bag of like 10 of them or whatever and stuff. But otherwise, I haven't bought bits in quite some time. DT says, greetings, I'd like to get back into hobby 40k after like 15 years. I'm not interested in playing, just painting and converting, and I'm not sure how to start over in terms of paints and tools and so on. I would tell you probably to start with a model and like look at it and go, okay, I'm going to need skin tone, I'm going to need metallic silver, I'm going to need, and just sort of figure out what you need for that model. And then, get some washes and things like that. And then go to the store, buy those things, and then paint what you can with the models, with the paints you bought on that guy. And then look at another model that's kind of different, not the same. Like, don't paint another skeleton or another of the same Space Marine, but paint a different thing. And then be like, okay, well, I'm going to need this and this and this and this. Or I've got these 3, but I'm going to need to buy these 3 others. And then you just kind of build that way. Like, if you go out and just say, hey, I'm going to, another option is just to go, I'm going to go drop $200 on paint. Yeah, you can do that, certainly. But if you're trying to kind of start slowly and kind of grow, really just going like, I have this one model, or maybe you're going to build a bunch of the same model, like you're going to build a 5 scouts or something. You know how you want them to look. Just get those paints and then go from there. And then you will slowly over time just accumulate a ridiculous amount of paint, and then there you'll be. That's the way I would do it generally these days. Reaper has a page up for funding bases. It's called Base Boss by Reaper. Yeah, I heard a little something about that. They're just going to be selling black plastic bases, I think, or something. There was something on Facebook about it recently. So I haven't really looked into it, but I should probably do that. Do you have advice for brushing on varnishes by hand? In the times that I've done it, the main reason I've done it is because I've looked at a model and said, some models will have parts that stick out more, and if you're going to be putting them like into like a foam, like battle foam or something like that, sliding them in and out of those crevices over time can start to rub off some of the paint if you don't varnish well. So there have been times when I've put on more brush on varnish before I spray my dull coat, and I've put it in parts where I know I'll be touching a lot, like the shoulders or the top of the head, or if there's like a weapon sticking up. Sometimes I have done that, put on a brush on varnish to be basically thicker than the spray varnish to help protect the paint more. But otherwise I don't know if there's actually like a good best practices process for it particularly. So RN Jesus says, why do I always miss these? I don't know, man. They're always at 9 a.m. Central Time every other Sunday. So the trick is you don't really miss it because you can still watch it, as it's recorded state. But, you've made the last 8 minutes, so that's something. What did I do wrong when my models look all dusty and dirty after I used GW Purity Seal? A lot of times too much humidity can make a spray varnish cloud and get weird looking. So don't do it on a humid day. Do it on a very dry day. If it's rained recently or if it's just humid outside, it's not good, and it will frequently do that. Sometimes spraying too close to the model will also cause it to fog and cloud, so watch out for that. Sometimes it's just a bad batch of Purity Seal, so maybe test it on something else, like a piece of paper or I don't know what, but test it on something and see how it works, because if it comes out cloudy right off the bat, just don't do it, because you can mess up your models. So yeah. Let's see here. Big hello from the UK. Thanks for helping me paint my Nurgle army for Age of Sigmar. These chats are always on whilst I'm painting, picking up plenty of tips and encouragement. Very much appreciated. Well, thank you. I appreciate it as well. I'm glad that I can help you paint more. Honestly, a lot of what I'm doing here in these live shows is just like, it's not exactly a podcast, obviously, because there's video and all that stuff, but it kind of acts as a bit of a podcast because you don't have to pay attention visually and you can be painting. And I know a lot of people are listening to this either live or recorded, and they use it as something to listen to while they're painting. I listen to podcasts and stuff like that all the time while I'm painting. I absolutely kind of require it now. It's very difficult for me to paint in silence. I need to be listening to something, so I'm glad I'm able to help. Let's see here. Zando says, I watched Steam Live for the first time. It helped me to clean my house before guests are here, and they are slowly starting to arrive. Bye. Oh, you watched the stream live. Okay, cool. Well, we'll see you, Zandos. Have fun with your guests. Temperature and humidity meters in hygrometers can be had in Europe for less than $10 a euro. Oh, okay. So figuring out what the humidity and that kind of stuff is in the air is very important, again, for varnishing, because any kind of spray varnish can cloud if it is too humid. It's just the way it works. I don't know if it like captures moisture in the air as it leaves the can and then it sticks it to the model. I don't know, but it's a mess. So yeah, make sure it's not a humid day when you're trying to, and make sure it's not too hot and not too cold. Varnishing is a pain, which is why I want to do it with my airbrush more, because then I could do it in the basement in the middle of the winter. Because in the middle of winter, at least in Wisconsin, it's not humid at all. So, it's actually quite dry. Let's see here. I just watered down old paints. Either it works or it doesn't. Then I buy what doesn't get revived. Yeah. If you used to paint a long time ago, some of your paints can probably be watered, or like kind of rejuvenated a little bit. There are specific, rather than just adding water, there are actual like airbrush thinners which you can get, which you might be able to put some of it into your whatever bottle of older paint, and then it might just help to, you stir it up with like a cocktail stick or a toothpick, and maybe get it back to being something usable. I would also watch the video about wet palette. I did a video about how to make a wet palette and how useful it is, and sometimes a paint that's kind of thick, if you put it on a wet palette and add some water to it, you can at least get it really usable for right now while you're making that color happen on the model. That's a pretty good way to go about it. So let's see here. You may have already answered this, but what is your all-time favorite army in Age of Sigmar? Well, right now I like Nurgle and Death, which is why I'm in the process of building both of those. My Nurgle army is further along. I've got more than 1,000 points painted. I've probably got closer to 1,300 or 1,400 points, if we're going to follow the points thing. My Death army is in progress, but yeah, those are the two ones I'm most interested in. I'm not an elf fan. I'm not super into dwarves. And the chaos that I'm going is mostly Nurgle type chaos, as opposed to the Khorne or Tzeentch or Slaanesh or anything like that. So yeah, those are my two mainly. I've always been a fan of Nurgle. I just like the modeling possibilities and the painting possibilities. And Death, I just like skeletons. I think they're just cool. Necromancers, all that kind of stuff has always been interesting to me as a lore sort of a thing. And also, frankly, the skeletons are relatively simple to paint, so that helps too, yeah. But let's see here. Can you do a Throwback Thursday show? Confrontation. I never played Confrontation. There was a game made by the same company called AT-43, which was a sci-fi game that had pre-painted miniatures. I played that for a while. That was cool. But I never played Confrontation. I know that Sam has got a hidden cache of Confrontation, the metal miniatures, because the thing about that game, I don't know much about it, but I know the models were really, really super cool, and a lot of painters really kind of covet the Confrontation metal models. And so he's got like a hidden cache that he's found from different places here and there that he uses sometimes and does some cool stuff with. So yeah, that's definitely it's a from what I understand, it was a cool game, but as a company, the Rackham just didn't know exactly what they were doing and sort of fell apart. So. Anyone try out the clear bases from Broken Egg Games? I've never been into clear bases, but I know some people are, because then you just get to see the board underneath. Makes sense. I get that. But no, I haven't tried them out. If you get cloudy varnish, wait for it to dry and varnish it on a better day, and then the clouding disappears. I've heard that too, that if you get like a cloudy varnish, if you go over it with a gloss varnish on a good day, not on the same day, that will help to get the cloudiness to go away, and then you can cover that, hopefully again, with a dull coat on a good day once it's dried, and then it'll hopefully get you back. So it's not all is lost, from what I understand, if you've got cloudy varnish, but it sometimes can be a problem. So let's see here. The best way to test spray paints is to spray on plastic ice cream bucket or cottage cheese bucket. That makes sense. Or I've also seen people who use Plastic forks. They'll take a plastic fork and they'll spray on that, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, and that works relatively well too, I think. But the buckets, I mean, recycle. That makes sense. So yeah, let's see here. What else have we got going on here? Confrontation and Warzone was awesome. I've got some old Warzone models that I bought years and years ago that are in a drawer in the basement, and big, chunky, mainly metal models that are kind of interesting, but I haven't done much with them. And I know that they redid Warzone relatively recently, and it's mostly resin now, and I like the look of some of the models. I looked at them, actually some of them like really up close 2 years ago at Adepticon. They're neat models. I don't know much about the system. I know for a while they were playing they did some battle reports or whatever, demo, let's plays, whatever, on Beasts of War, and it looked kind of interesting. And the models are super cool still. To this day, I think they're cool, but I've never played the game, so I don't know much about them that way. Let's see here. The one thing, though, that I will admit about Warzone that threw me off, and it's one of the things that throws me off about Infinity, is a lot of the names are like maybe French or something. I don't know, maybe French-Canadian. I don't know. But a lot of them I cannot pronounce properly. Like there's like Fusiliers, that might not be right. It's probably not. There's a lot of different weird names for like some of the units in both of those games, and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not pronouncing it right, and that throws me off. So let's see here. Sliger, it says, have you ever used Microsol or maybe a similar solvent for softening decals for regular surfaces? I just ordered some and I'm looking forward to trying it. I have not. I don't do much with decals. Like I've never used decals on anything Games Workshop ever. Like I've never used them in all the 40K stuff that I did. My first real decals, actually, well, I did some decals when I was a little kid on model airplanes, stuff like that. They always turned out like garbage, and they're hard to use. At least I found them. But then again, I was like 10. So nowadays I'm not 10, and I did use them on my Flames of War tanks because tanks just look really weird if they don't have any markings on them at all. So I didn't use Microsol or Microset. What I just did was where I wanted to put the thing, I just brushed on a gloss coat, let it completely dry, and then I laid the decal over that glossy area, and then made sure to get as much of the moisture out and all that stuff. And then I put gloss coat after that completely dried. Then I put gloss coat over it again to help blend out the edges. And then when I dull coated and everything like that, it worked out really nicely. So you don't get that like, oh, I can see where the decal was cut sort of deal. It worked out really nice. But it was on flat areas, let's be honest. Like if you're trying, I've seen people before who have done like the Ultramarines, and they've got the actual Ultramarine symbol decal on every shoulder pad, and I'm like, that is madness. That would take forever, and trying to get it to bend around that weird shape, no, not for me, thanks. But they do really add something if you can do them really well. They do something, and from what I understand, Microsol and Microset are supposed to be pretty good for that stuff, so good luck with it. Let's see here. Yeah, Fusilier is indeed French, means rifleman. See, but they could just say rifleman. Anyway, that's not Grenadiers, Dragoons, Fusiliers. Yeah, it's difficult. Silvering is called the visible decal edge thing. Good to know. That makes sense. I get it. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who was here for the show. I appreciate it. It's a little after 11. I've got to get my stuff together, and then my wife and I are going to lunch at her parents' like we do every Sunday, and then later on in the afternoon I'm going to be playing some Age of Sigmar, maybe playing a 1,000-point battle, which I'm looking forward to. I'm sure I will take some pictures, and I'm sure that I will put these pictures on Facebook, Instagram, all those different places that you can follow me if you want to on the social media. I guess there's a slim chance I might do Facebook Live, maybe? I don't know. We'll see how the internet's going at that shop. Sometimes their internet's not awesome, and I guess I could just use my own phone internet, but whichever. So anyway, yeah, so 2 weeks from today, there'll be another one of these, and it'll be great. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope that you guys had a good time, and comment in the comments later on if you got any other questions and stuff like that. You know how I like to answer comments. I try to do it as much as I can. So anyway, thanks to everybody, and it's been a good Sunday, and we'll see you later.